God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I'm your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here breaking down the Justice for John O'Keefe case. Now, let me just get this out of the way. I have no nails today. It's horrifying. It took me forever to soak my nails off. But I did it because the side effect of wearing those big gems that I love so much is that when they get stuck on things, they tend to pull your whole nail off. And that's a real problem. So I soaked them all off and I'm trying to let my nails do some healing. We'll see how long I'm able to go without them. Usually it's not very long. So you may notice they're not there. And as you have heard me say for a while now, I have been focusing on an analysis of Ms. Caitlyn Albert and her testimony. And that's largely because when I went to go and do the analysis the first time, naturally, YouTube just played me Tristan Morris's video. It just came on as I was distracted for a moment. And when I came back to the screen and saw the look on his face, I realized that there was a lot there. And that's how I became a lot more interested in Caitlyn Albert's testimony. You must ask yourself, why go to such incredibly great lengths to lie with abandon? Why do that? Because if you are just a witness, just somebody who was at a party on, the night before a big snowstorm, why commit perjury? So, with that, let's get into Miss Caitlyn Albert.
Go ahead, Mr. Lilly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure. Caitlyn Albert, Caitlin Albert.
And where do you live, ma'am?
I live in Easton.
And how long have you lived there?
About 3 years.
With anyone do you live there?
I live with Tristan Morris, my boyfriend.
And you and Miss Morris, about how long have the two of you been together?
Almost 8 years.
Now, prior to living in Easton, where was it that you lived before that?
I lived in Canton.
All right, so right off the bat, what do we notice? Miss Caitlyn is trying to present herself well. She's the oldest with 4 siblings, so that tells us a lot about her character as the older, more responsible of the children. She is trying to be thorough. She's trying to be clear. She's trying to be well-spoken. She's trying to be the good girl. And she's going to play that up all the way.
And specifically, where in Canton did you live?
34 Fairview Road.
And how long was it that you lived at 34 Fairview Road?
Geez, I lived there from about 2011 to 2021.
Couple other things about Caitlyn. She is trying to put forth an air of, I'm going to be specific. But in the beginning, she obviously has been told just to answer the question. Be direct, be succinct, don't say more than you have to. And you can tell because she's aware of the answers that she is giving.
And that was a family home, is that right?
Yes.
And who did you live at 34 Fairview Road with?
My mom, my dad, and my 4 siblings.
This tells us that for Caitlyn, mom is the most important figure in her little world. Mom was mentioned first. And if you think about it, she could have mentioned them in any order. I lived with my siblings and my parents. I lived with my dad, my mom, and my siblings. I lived with my sister, my two brothers. Like, she could have said it any number of ways. She says mom, dad, siblings.
And your mom's name is Nicole, is that right?
Yes.
And your dad or your father's name is Brian Albert?
Yes.
And how many siblings did you have, I'm sorry?
I have 4.
Are you the oldest?
I am.
And do you work?
I do.
What do you do for?
I work for the Massachusetts Attorney General's office in the Medicaid Fraud Division.
And how long have you been doing that?
Almost 3 years, I think. In September, it'll be 3 years.
Now, ma'am, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022 to January 29th, 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall what days of the week they were?
I actually am not sure that I recall the exact days of the week. Maybe.
All right. Here's the first indicator that we get of Caitlyn trying to put forth this idea that she's just terrible with days and times. She doesn't know them. She goes crazy in her mind when she's asked to recall times and days and dates, which is a very similar way that Tristan tried to present himself. So clearly, someone has been in both of their ears saying, just play stupid when it comes to dates and times. Because that is what she wants us to know. And so with this question, which was very specific to what days of the week were January 28th and January 29th, 2022. And you can see even in her eyes, she starts out thinking about the question. She goes to answer, but then she remembers she's not supposed to be good with dates and times. And so she says that out loud. I'm not sure if I could recall that, but then magically she does anyway. And we're going to see a pattern similar to that from Caitlyn throughout her testimony. She tries to make it seem like she's just really bad with dates and times. And then lo and behold, she winds up giving us dates and times or more specific information.
Friday or Saturday.
Fair to say around the weekend time?
Yeah, weekend, definitely.
Oh, and of course, Adam Lally we never can forget that what a scumbag he is and how every time he tries to make these folks look better, every time. It's impressive.
And as far as your family is concerned, the 29th, what if any significance is that day?
That would be my brother's birthday.
So, Lally asks, the 29th, what significance does this have to your family? And her answer to this is actually funny to me. She says, that would be my brother's birthday. That would be, except for that really annoying detail about that Boston police officer that died on the front lawn of our house. So it would be my brother's birthday before that whole thing about John O'Keefe and, January 29th.
And which of your brothers is it whose birthday that was?
Brian Albert Jr.
And is beyond Brian Albert Jr., just for sake of my own lack of confusion, is there some other name that you would call him as far as differentiating him between your brothers?
Little Brian, sometimes, even though he's not so little.
All right, a couple of things here. First off, Caitlyn is very aware of the fact that she's got eyes on her. She's trying to come across in a very specific way. She wants to be seen as kind of innocent and fun and mature and whatever. But we see in this question and answer between her and Lally he's looking for another nickname because apparently Brian Albert Jr. is too difficult for Adam Lally to say, or not good enough as a distinction between him and his father. So she answers the question, but she answers with a question inflection. So she essentially asks him, "You mean little Brian?" She doesn't actually ask, but that is what she insinuates. So what do we get from her? Well, she knows that Lally has very specific answers in mind. And again, she's a good girl. So she wants to give him the right answer. And we'll see other examples of that as we move along. But really pay attention to these early questions, because you'll notice he asks a question and she answers pretty matter-of-factly. And that dissipates pretty quickly.
Okay. And so during the course of that week, sort of leading up to the weekend, what, if any, discussion did you have with your mother or anybody else in your family in regard to little Brian's birthday?
So leading up to that weekend, I was aware that my brother might have like a friend or two over the house for his birthday. And then I had spoken with my mom and my aunt, Julie Albert, about maybe going to a local Canton bar, grabbing some food and some drinks, and just kind of seeing where the night takes us, and then maybe ultimately going back and seeing my brother for just to say happy birthday, kind of end the night that way.
All right. So Lally is asking about what her understanding of the plan for the weekend with her brother's birthday, what her understanding of that was, had she spoken to her mother or her aunts or whoever leading up to it. And this answer is, first off, way more information than any of us needed. So you're going to start to notice that Caitlyn, her answers get kind of more loaded, and that there's way too much information in here. We don't need all this information. So why is she telling us all of this? So this is what she says. So leading up to that night, I was aware that my brother might have like a friend or two over the house. So she was aware, I was aware, but that doesn't mean everybody else was aware. So she knew her brother wasn't going out. So in case there was any question about whether little Brian was going to go out with everybody, she knew that wasn't part of the plan. Okay. And she uses the phrase over the house, not our house, not my parents' house, not my house, not his house, meaning her brother's house. She uses the house. Now, okay, you might say, well, it's a little cleaner to say it that way in this context. But we are talking about essentially the house that she grew up in. And we are talking about a family affair, her brother's birthday. So it appears to me that she is trying to distance herself from the house. Now, obviously, there'd be lots of good reasons to do that. But it does appear, remember, this all occurs before the events that take place later on that night. So this is her going back, theoretically, in her mind to remember what was going on before that, which means, maybe the house already was something she was trying to distance herself from. And then I had spoken with my mom and my Aunt Julie about maybe, which is distancing, going to a local Canton bar. Doesn't give us a name, grabbing some food and some drinks, which you'll notice she separates them completely. So most people would say grab some food and drinks, but she doesn't. She says grab some food and some drinks, which is a little strange. And she does that repeatedly, which makes me wonder about whether she's not intentionally trying to split apart the alcohol, separate alcohol from food for some reason. And then things start to really come off the rails. So she says, and just kind of seeing where the night takes us, and then maybe ultimately going back and seeing my brother, for just to say happy birthday. So this part of the statement is a mess. You'll note that when we say the word just, it means only, like specifically, this is what we did. We just painted our nails, right? Just followed by kind of essentially negates whatever we're talking about. So they didn't just then kind of. That's not, whatever she's about to say is a wash. And what she's trying to do here is take our attention away from them going back to the house at 34 Fairview. She's trying to minimize that was what the plan was later in the night. Just maybe see where the night takes us. Now, that struck me immediately as the weirdest thing in the world. She's going out with her parents, aunts, and uncles to a bar, okay? And she's talking about seeing where the night takes us. Like, come on, that's odd. I mean, that's just odd. I don't care if you are a drinking town, a drinking culture. That is a weird way to talk about being out at a bar with your parents. Just going to see where the night takes us. So what I understand this to mean now, so here, this is the important part. Ultimately, seeing where the night takes us and then maybe distancing, ultimately going back and seeing my brother, for just to say happy birthday. So that's where the lying is, because she wasn't just going to go back to the house to say happy birthday to her brother. The plan had been for her to stay over at her parents' house. So that is what all of this explaining is really sort of leading us up to. Trying to cover up this idea that from the start, the plan was that they were going to hang out. She was going to sleep over. And that makes sense because Tristan was supposed to go plowing and she would have been all by herself, not just through the night, but also the next day because he's going to come home and crash. Makes sense that she would have wanted to have been snowed in at her parents' house with all the action. I mean, this is the girl who's talking about seeing where the night takes us, going out all night, partying hard with her parents. And then the next day, she just can't wait to get away from them. She has to leave so badly because she doesn't want to be snowed in at her parents' house that she needs Tristan, who's supposed to be getting up in an hour to go plow, to come and drive and pick her up in the middle of the night. No. Sorry, Caitlyn. No. I mean, in many ways, this is just as absurd as the fact that her parents didn't come out of the house at 34 Fairview. The moment that they, Jen McCabe, Carrie Roberts, and Karen Reed show up at the front lawn.
Can you hear me? Why don't somebody call 911?
As the week went along, what, if anything, sort of affected or changed plans in reference to that?
Nothing that I can really think of. Nothing really changed. I mean, that was sort of, I don't remember exactly how the plan came about, that we were going to, go get food and that my brother was going to have friends over. But I believe that was always sort of our plan.
So this is kind of a funny moment because, again, she senses that Lally's looking for some kind of answer that she doesn't have. And that's because, whether, she believed that little Brian was going to go out and then he changes his mind, or if the snow somehow meant that she stayed at home, or, she didn't want to stay at her parents' house and she was supposed to stay at her parents' house. Whatever he's reaching for here, Caitlyn doesn't get the message. And then she starts to try to reduce the commitment, essentially make it sound like maybe she got something wrong. She starts trying to distance herself from her own words in case she said something incorrectly. And this was his way of giving her a chance to correct whatever she said. Right? I think, am I missing something? And obviously, whatever she's missing, we don't know. One other thing that I want you to pay close attention to, throughout this testimony, Caitlyn Albert, you can find her hiding her lips. Sometimes it looks like she's, kind of playing with her lip gloss or something. But what she's doing is trying to remind herself not to say whatever it is that she's thinking not to say. So be on the lookout for those little gestures where her mouth kind of closes in on itself the same way you would if you were trying to say to somebody that, I'm going to keep my mouth shut and I'm going to throw away the key like this.
And so specifically on the 28th, at some point you came to Canton, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall how you came to Canton and where was it that you went first?
So I can't say for sure. From what I remember, I believe that my boyfriend Tristan and I went straight from Easton to the waterfall and actually got there before my mom and my Aunt Julie, from what I can remember. And then my mom and Julie ended up meeting us there. And that's when we sort of started just kind of hanging out, ordering food, some drinks. And we were there for a little bit, just the four of us.
All right. So this is a straight lie. Absolute lie. 100% bold face. So let's go through it. So I can't say for sure. So that's the first way that she tries to distance herself. Before she says anything else, she tells us she's not sure. Then she says, I believe, once again, indicating, I don't know if what I'm about to say is true. Right? So there's no ownership of what she's about to say. She is trying to tell us something while also basically telling us this is a complete, utter fabrication. My boyfriend Tristan and I went straight, meaning directly, from Easton to the waterfall. And then actually, there's some kind of surprise that happens, got there before my mom and my Aunt Julie, which is another way of distancing herself from what she's telling you. taking away any authority, any ownership from these words. Now, we also know it's not true because both Tristan and Sarah Levinson confirm this is not what happened.
And when you arrived at 34 Fairview Road, you went inside the house?
I think I went inside for a moment, yeah, just to wait.
And do you know who, if anyone, did you see in there that you knew or recognized or didn't?
I know my niece Caitlyn was in there, my nephew Brian. I don't recall.
For me, it was just an ordinary day. I went out and I met them for a drink.
So you indicated you went and met them. Who is them?
My girlfriend Caitlyn, and that's all I remember.
And you might want to say, well, maybe she just forgot. Okay. But the fact that she says, my boyfriend Tristan and I went straight from Easton to the waterfall tells us this is an intentional lie. How do we know? Because she makes a point to say that it was a direct route from her house to the waterfall. And the only reason to use that language, to throw in straight, is if there's in your mind another option that you don't want us to look at. Right? If you're thinking I was over somewhere else, but I want you to believe that I was over here, right? Then you're going to use straight as a way to emphasize that you weren't at this place over here. I definitely wasn't at that house because I went straight from Easton to the waterfall. So this is a straight up lie, and we know that she knows it. And not only because she uses the word straight, but also because there's 4 different ways, at least in this one paragraph, where she's distancing herself from what she's saying. She's telling you, don't hold me to any of this. So ask yourself, why? Why would this child be lying to us about where she was before she got to the waterfall? Because what we know happened in real life, she was at her parents' house already.
Tell me who's in the house when you get there.
It's Brian Jr., his mother Nicole, his sister Caitlyn, and then his aunt Julie.
What do you do?
I think we were just sitting on the couch, hanging out, waiting to see what the plan was, to see like when other people were going to show up.
Did other people arrive or did people leave before other people arrived?
Brian's mom, sister, and aunt left before anyone else arrived.
Do you know generally around what time his aunt and mother and sister left?
We got there, like I said, between 7 and 8, and they probably left within 20 minutes of us getting there.
Okay.
So I can't say for sure.
And how do we know that? Because Sarah Levinson tells us that when she arrives at 34 Fairview to have her big night with Brian Albert Jr. to celebrate his birthday, it's Caitlyn, Nicole Albert, and Julie Albert. And then Tristan tells us, though he won't at all even pretend to give us a time, because he too will not give us a timeline and will not nail himself to a timeline in any way, in exactly the same way that Caitlyn won't. But she gets this wrong because Tristan tells us that he drove in by himself to meet Caitlyn, and he won't name anybody else who was at the waterfall. So he tells us, listen, I was doing my own thing that day. and I went to meet my girlfriend at the waterfall. And then I was going home to get sleep before I went out plowing at 3 a.m. That's Tristan's story. So Caitlyn is 100% lying to us here. This isn't debatable. This is a lie. But then it gets weird because now she's then saying, and then my mom, and Julie ended up, which is just, completely incorrect language. And then my mom, and Julie ended up meeting us there. And that's when we sort of started kind of like hanging out, ordering food, again, separating out some drinks. And we were there for a little bit, just the four of us. This is me interrupting your programming to remind you to like this video right now. And don't forget to subscribe. Like this video. It seems like she's thinking about her mother when she says her, like she's about to reference her mother as her, but she corrects. And then she says, my mom and Julie ended up meeting us there. But remember, we know that's not true because she was with her mom and Julie. And that's when we sort of, again, this just kind of like, so this just and kind of are now becoming patterns that we see with her when she's lying. Like hanging out, ordering food, some drinks, and we were there for a little bit, just the four of us. So why it is that she couldn't just tell us that she went with her mother and Julie from 34 Fairview to the waterfall and Tristan came and met them there, I have no idea. But that is what she's trying to hide from us. She's lying about that. And that makes us wonder, was Caitlyn driving that night? Was Caitlyn driving? Is that why she's trying to distance herself from the alcohol? Because she was driving. Could she have had her own car? I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, right? Theoretically, because Tristan says he comes and gets her. Maybe Tristan never did come and get her. Maybe Caitlyn had her car at her parents' house and drove herself back to East End.
And do you recall about what time it was that you got to the waterfall?
Unfortunately, I can't remember an exact time, but it would have been around like dinner time. So if I had to guess, maybe like 6.
And that's, we know, incorrect. Of course, she puts all kinds of distance between herself and that answer. Of course, wants to take this opportunity to remind us how bad she is with dates and times and, those details. And gives us the wrong time. Is she doing that on purpose? Probably. Now, pay attention carefully to this question and answer.
And as far as drinking was concerned with that night, you were at a bar and you weren't driving, correct?
Oh, yeah, no, I was not driving.
All right. So this is an interesting way of asking this question.
As far as drinking was concerned with that night, you were at a bar and you weren't driving, correct?
Oh, yeah, no, I was not driving.
And she says, oh, yeah. No, I was not driving. But at one point, actually shakes her head yes. Like, oh, yeah. No, I was not. No, I wasn't driving. So we're going to slow this down.
Oh, yeah, no, I was not driving. Oh, yeah, no, I was not driving.
It's an interesting answer. because she actually says yes and then says no and then uncontracts the statement to tell us she wasn't driving. And it was this statement when I first saw it that tipped me off to the fact that she may have been driving, that she may have had her car. Because she actually says, oh, yeah. So this is a way that you can trick yourself into lying easily by answering yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was. No, I was not.
And do you recall specifically what kind of drinks you had or what you had to drink that night?
I believe that night I was drinking White Claw, I think.
And your boyfriend, Mr. Morris, as far as what, if anything, was going on with him that night, as far as how long was he at the bar?
Yeah, so we were aware that it was likely going to snow that night. So my boyfriend Tristan had gotten offered to do some like plowing or shoveling. So he knew that he was going to have to probably be up for the majority of the night into the morning doing some shoveling. So he didn't stick around at the waterfall for too long. I think he had some food, maybe like 1 or 2 drinks, and then he actually ended up going home.
And you stayed at the waterfall after he went home?
I stayed there, yeah, with my mom and my Aunt Julie.
So we know that Tristan was supposed to be plowing early that morning, that he did go home early to try to get some sleep. We know that he did not stick around the waterfall for that long. And so we know that most of what she's saying here is true.
And if you recall, as far as that evening at the waterfall, what, if anything, was going on as far as like live entertainment?
I want to say that there might have been a band. I just don't want to say for sure, but I think I do recall a band coming in and setting up, and yeah, I think that there might have been one.
So this is just a weird question, because why does it matter if there was a live band? Why is Lally even asking her about whether there was live music? Like anyone gives a crap about the band. Do you recall if there was live entertainment? I mean, it's just absurd. It's an absurd question. It is a typical Adam Lally BS question. But her answer is interesting because she tells us, I want to say that there might have been a band, but I just don't want to say for sure. But I think I do recall a band coming in and setting up, and yeah, I think there might have been one. Like, what she's saying is, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and so I don't want to answer this question. But when I think about it, and actually am honest with myself about whether there was a band, I kind of remember that there was.
Now, as far as the evening progressed and went on, who, if anyone else, came into the waterfall and sort of joined your group when you were there?
Sure. So I can't say for sure, like times of people arriving or order of people arriving.
So here's another example of her saying, like, yep, I'm just bad with names and dates and times. So, don't ask me.
But I know at one point, my uncle, Chris Albert, he ended up joining us. He owns a pizza shop across the street. So when he was done working, he came and joined us. And then my aunt Jen McCabe and her husband Matt McCabe joined us. And then at some point, my father, Brian Albert, and his friend Brian Higgins also joined us. So at one point in time, I'm not sure the order of which, everybody came in or the time that they came in, but at some point we were all kind of there hanging out.
So what she just told us is absolutely nothing. She just told us, not from what she remembers, but from what she knows, that when her uncle was done working, he left the pizza shop and came over to the waterfall. She knows her aunt and uncle showed up, and she knows her dad and Brian Higgins showed up. That is what she just told you. And that is the same thing that I could have told you or any one of us could have also told anybody. And that's the thing about a lot of this testimony. She never expects to answer most of these questions from memory. These questions are all rehearsed, all of them. And so it almost surprises her when she does have to answer from memory, just like we saw with the question about the live band. If she had not opened her mouth before she answered that question and spent any time at all just trying to remember back, she could have very easily said, oh yeah, there was a band. That's what she ends up telling us. But instead, her first instinct was to go with some kind of rehearsed nonsense about how she doesn't remember anything. And because she's so focused on that, she doesn't realize that it was really easy to remember that there was a band, which outs her as someone who's trying to deceive us from the start.
Now, and your father and Mr. Higgins, do you know where they had come from or where they were coming from?
Yes, I believe they were coming from New York from a funeral. And I remember I had asked my mom, like, is dad going to stop by? And she was like, I don't know. He's tired. You know, he's coming back from New York. And I was like, oh, I want to see him. So I think I convinced him to come. And then Brian Higgins just kind of tagged along from what I can remember.
So let's think about the absurdity of this statement from Caitlyn Albert. This reminds me a lot of Colin Albert's statement to his aunt and uncle when he was leaving their house, when he was like, my mommy and daddy just really want me to get home, guys, so I'm leaving. See you later.
I just said, I'm going home. My mom wants me home. I love you guys. Bye.
This is pretty much the same thing, but the Caitlyn Albert version. Yes, I believe they were coming from New York from a funeral. And I remember I had asked my mom, like, is dad going to stop by? And she was like, I don't know. He's tired. He's coming back from New York. And I was like, oh, I want to see him. So I think I convinced him to come, and then Brian Higgins just kind of tagged along from what I can remember. I mean, this is so absurd. It's so absurd and childish that it almost makes me think this is what she really believes. Because this is the kind of statement that would only come from like a 7-year-old child. Someone who is so narcissistically focused that they don't realize their parents exist outside of them. Like, their parents are not people at 7 years old. Your parents are just these beings that serve you. And, and Brian Higgins just kind of tags along to serve Caitlyn. Oh, it's funny. I'm sorry. It's so funny. So, very clearly to me, this conversation with her mother is completely contrived. It's just utterly nonsense. I don't know where they came up with it. I hope they got a few good laughs in when they were, rehearsing this nonsense, because it's just garbage. That's it. It's garbage.
Now, as far as Mr. Higgins was concerned, is that someone that you were familiar with prior to this evening on the 28th?
I knew of him and I had met him a couple times, but nothing more than that.
And this is a weird thing to say also. Did you know Mr. Higgins? I knew of him and I had met him a couple of times, but I'm nothing more than that, right? You would have thought that Adam Lally was asking if she had dated Higgins. Like, did you guys make it past first base? Because she says, I knew of him, nothing more than that, right? Like, distance, distance, distance. Let me just get as far away from Brian Higgins as I possibly can. It's just so telling. Why do you need to get away from Brian Higgins, Caitlyn?
As far as you're aware, the house that you, for lack of a better term, grew up in or spent some formative years in, had Mr. Higgins ever been over to that house at 34 Fairview when you were there?
Not that I know of.
Right. So the way she answers this statement gives it away that she does know he had been there. So think about the question. The house, this is a house that was very important to you through your formative years. Do you know if Brian Higgins had been to that very important house at 34 Fairview? And she stops. And then she says, not that I know of. Meaning, I know that he has been, but not when I was there. So the answer that she's giving is completely dishonest because she's saying, not that I know of. What she really means to say is, yes, he was there, but not when I was there. I never saw him at my house. But instead, she lies. She says, not that I know of. Wink, wink. I mean, it's bizarre. That's the best way for me to say it. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that people would go to these great lengths to lie this much and about these mundane, dumb things. And it really makes me wonder about Caitlyn and if she is just like a total narcissist, because I don't believe that Caitlyn Albert is responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. Do you? Maybe she likes being a part of the drama. Maybe that's what this is. I don't know why she's dragging herself further and deeper into the middle of this horrible nightmare, but she is.
Now, at some point later in the evening, who, if anyone else, came and sort of came up to your group or joined you when you were at the wall?
So from what I can remember, I remember sitting at like a high top table, and it was me and my mom sitting next to each other, and we were facing like the front door of the waterfall. And I recall a man and a woman walking in, and at first I didn't know who either of them were, but I noticed that the man started talking to like some of my aunts and uncles that I was with, and he seemed friendly with the people that were in our group. So I had said to my mom, like, oh, who is that? And she said, oh, that's John O'Keefe. And I had known of him because I knew his story about his niece and his nephew and his family. So I had known of him, but had never met him before. And so then I just assumed that the woman that was with him was his significant other, girlfriend, wife. I didn't know. So then, I didn't really speak to either of them. I think at one point, John came up to me and my mom and asked, like, do you guys need anything? Do you need a drink? And we said no, and that was pretty much it.
So this is a really long statement, and I will say a lot of this is true. Some of it we can, verify with our own eyes because we can watch the moment that John and Karen walk into the waterfall. We can see where Caitlyn and Nicole are. So some of this is just from our own experience. We can point and say, oh yeah, that's close enough. But there are some tells in here. For example, we know that she knew who John O'Keefe was, right? She definitely knew who John O'Keefe was. And there were some other interactions because she tells us that it was pretty much it that he came and asked her and her mom if they wanted a drink at the bar because he was going up to the bar, which means that it wasn't it, that there were other, maybe small, not as significant, not as important to tell us about, or things that she doesn't want to tell us about, interactions, either with John or with Karen.
You say you knew of John O'Keefe and sort of the story as you related. Do you recall how it was that you came to know anything about Mr. O'Keefe? Or who was it through that you came to know about Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, in general, it was kind of like a known thing. the tragedy of what happened in the O'Keefe family. And so I had just kind of heard that story. And then on top of that, John O'Keefe's niece is either the same age or around the same age as some of my younger cousins. So I knew that she was friendly with them. I knew that my Aunt Jen McCabe would like help out here and there, going to sports, going to different events, whatever. I know that my Aunt Jen was friendly with John O'Keefe, and I knew that my Aunt Julie and Uncle Chris were somewhat friends with him as well.
So what I'm getting also from Caitlyn is that she and her mom talk. Her and her mother are very close. They gossip. And when she tells us that she knew the O'Keefe family story, of course, it's a widely known story, which is horrible, where his sister dies of a brain tumor and her husband overdoses on narcotics and dies a month later. But the kids don't know that until Hank Brennan outs it when he has Michael Proctor's kindergarten friend, John Diamandis, read those text messages, which say that he overdosed on the wife's grave.
Chip, name of that BPD cop?
And does he respond to Chip, name of that BPD cop?
He does.
What does he say?
John O'Keefe.
What is the next question from somebody in the group?
How old?
And what does Mr. Proctor respond?
He took custody of his sister's kids.
The next one?
She died of cancer and the father overdosed on her grave.
So it was Hank Brennan and the text messages that were read out loud by Proctor's kindergarten buddy that ultimately, I guess, gave John's niece and nephew the truth about what happened to their dad. Yeah, good times there. So she knows that story. Everybody knows that story. So, due to some technical difficulties, we have to record this second part again.
John O'Keefe's niece is either the same age or around the same age as some of my younger cousins. So I knew that she was friendly with them. I knew that my Aunt Jen McCabe would like help out here and there, going to sports, going to different events, whatever. I know that my Aunt Jen was friendly with John O'Keefe, and I knew that my Aunt Julie and Uncle Chris were somewhat friends with him as well.
So it's interesting because she actually changes tenses in this statement from I know to I knew. And as is true with pretty much everything she says throughout this testimony, it isn't coming from memory. This is all contrived. It's a narrative. It's a story that she has rehearsed, that she is telling us. And you can even tell sometimes Lally doesn't even finish his question before she's ready because she wants to get out the rehearsed story. And it's fascinating to me. It almost surprises her over and over again when she remembers. You can even almost see it when she switches from the story to an actual memory. And all of this about how she knew John and the relationships, that's not coming from memory. It's all coming from what she knows now and being informed by whatever stories that this family is telling, has created, and certainly scripted that she bring forward in this testimony.
With reference to Mr. O'Keefe and his significant other that you described, had you ever met them prior to that evening?
I had not to my knowledge. I wouldn't be surprised if there was maybe like a sporting event or something where we, met each other in passing, but I had never formally met John or the woman that he was with.
So what this tells me is that she was told by somebody else that she had met them before. At whatever point the family's recounting, going way back to who John O'Keefe is, who Karen Reed is, they're saying, no, you remember, you've met them. they were at so-and-so, we were all together at this place, and you met them. So when she says, I don't remember meeting them formally, what she's telling you is that she didn't have a memory of formally being introduced to them, but that she had met them from somebody else's recounting of when they had all been together somewhere in the past.
And so on that evening on January 28th, you had never met nor were you aware of anybody by the name of Karen Reed?
No, I was not.
And that is a lie. She did know who Karen Reed was. She didn't know her personally, but she knew who she was. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if Mom, because Mom gossips with Caitlyn, if Mom at some point in passing had mentioned it. So she knew who these people were.
And if you know, about what time was it that
And there she is with her lips again, reminding herself to keep her mouth shut.
that they came into the waterfall and came over to you?
I can't say for sure. I'm not.
Up, here we are again. Up, as soon as she hears that Lally is asking a question that refers to a time or a date, she blanks out. Oh, I can't. I'm just so bad with those things. And again, that's the narrative. This is what she wants us to believe so that we can't nail her down to a timeline.
Short time.
But fair to say, the other people that you testified about, as far as your uncles, your aunts, and things like that, were they all there at the time that Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Reed came in?
I believe so. I believe that everyone who was there in the group that I was with was present when John O'Keefe and Karen Reed arrived.
And about
Not
what
from
time
memory.
was it that things started to wind down as far as the waterfall was concerned?
Again, I'm the worst with times, but I would say it was around like 12-ish that we kind of said, let's kind of head out and head home. I would say 12-ish.
Oh, fascinating here. Number of things. First, she says, once again, I would say. So it's not coming from memory. It's coming from what she knows. Right? How many times at this point has this person seen the waterfall video? The same amount that we've all seen it. So she knows exactly what time they left the waterfall. It's on video. Around 12. Okay? So she can't deny that because it's on video. But she also wants to make sure that she reiterates how bad she is with remembering times. That's the one very dominant story that she's directed to make sure she throws out here. And it's so obvious, it's painful to watch. But then, interestingly, she refers to leaving the waterfall and going home. And when she says going home, she's not talking about going to Easton. She's talking about going back to 34 Fairview, right? Which means in her mind, at the time that she's sitting at the waterfall, the plan in her mind was to sleep over at home. Home. When we say go home, what does home signify? The last place that you're going to go. It's the end. That's it. We're not going anywhere else. I'm going home. So in Caitlyn's mind, as she thinks back to being at the waterfall, as much as she's trying to contrive all of this BS to tell us a story, it slips in that in her mind at that time, she was going home, and the last stop was 34 Fairview, not wherever she was going in Easton.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.